All right, Johnny Walker is sticking with it, and you've got to, right? You got to stick with it to the grave. The greats will do what's called kayfabe. Now, kayfabe is a term that comes back from more of the carny times of professional wrestling, where they were still going town to town, bringing in a local tough guy. Like, do you know how pro wrestling used to work before there was TV and before there was digital and everybody had a smartphone and before Twitter and all of these things? They were just a traveling circus. And they would literally have a truck with their stuff in the back, and they'd pull from one town to the next. They'd pop the popcorn. Business was solely on gross receipts at the door, meaning ticket sales. The wrestlers themselves were paid on a percentage. So if you did 10,000 seats, right, which never happened back then, but if you did, you could get a huge check, or you could also get $25 for gas money, which was just enough to get to the next town and to try this all over again. So one of the things that these carnies would do is they would get into a town. The matches are going to be on Saturday, and they go to a local bar on a Wednesday, and they'd find one of the tough guys there. They'd find the local town tough guy. And right there in the bar, organically, they would build this match, but they would stick in character and they would act as though it's real. And they would get a commitment from the guy. Then if the guy really was a tough guy, they would even go a step further, which is to have the match done, make everybody know, and then fight him right in that spot. And the wrestlers used to be what's called hookers back then, or at least a couple of them were. A couple of them were actual shooters, which means they were legit tough guys. If they were actually trying to pin you or stretch you, they had the ability to. Then, of course, you got the pretenders. But when it was one of those situations and the town actually had a legit tough guy, they could tell by looking at it, one of the hookers would engage with him and actually hurt him. He would hurt him in some capacity, maybe twist his ankle, something along these lines, because when the actual tough guy gets to the match on Saturday that they're using to draw, they are going to actually fight. They're going to actually try to pin the local tough guy who's not in on the gag. Or they're going to try to stretch him, make him tap out, because he's not in on the gag. So one of these wrestlers got to be a legitimate, pretty tough guy, but he's also going to be legitimately hurt and beat up as they go to the next town. But this is what it was. And you stayed in character. Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man, would go nowhere without Virgil with him in a tuxedo and in a limousine. When he was at home in Minnesota, if he wanted to go to a restaurant, Virgil goes with him and he arrives in a tuxedo in a limousine. When Terry Bollea wants to make a local reservation for he and his family, he will make the reservation under the name of Hulk Hogan, and he will show up to the meal in red and yellow. It was called kayfabe. Where that term came from was these carnies not having enough money to call home. So they would call home collect. And some of you you'll be too old to know about collect calls, but you used to go up to something called a payphone, and there was a way to call collect. So an operator would connect you, and the operator would say to the person that picks up the phone, this is a collect call, do you accept the charges? Meaning, I'm at the payphone, I was supposed to put my quarters in, but I don't have any quarters, I'm broke. So I call you, but you agree to pay the quarters that I should have put in. So they would say yes. You called your mother, you called your wife, you called your son and daughter. They would say yes. Well, the only message is to let your family know that you've made it to the town safely. So when the operator would say, who is the call from? You would say kayfabe. So the operator who is now connected with your loved one will say, do you accept the charges from kayfabe? Your loved one says no and hangs up, but now you've given them the message, which was, hey, honey, I've made it and I'm safe. And you didn't have to pay the couple of quarters, which you didn't have because you're a carny and you're collecting, right? I mean, it's just the way that it was. The greats will stay in character and the greats will never wilt. So Johnny Walker is telling a story that the night of his fight, when they stopped the fight, he lost his mind. He said, I lost my mind. That's why he was getting mad. And that's why he was shaking the referee, right? You've got to stay with it. I like the whole thing. Johnny gets a good reception from the crowd. Ankalaev does not. Johnny's got a bit where he comes up and he's a goofball and he falls, right? I mean, I don't like the bit. He's goofy enough that he can pull it off. I don't like anyone trying to act like a nerd. I don't get it. I don't think what it takes to getting you where you ultimately want to be, which is the main event on top of the bill, nerds have never done well. But if you're going for the nerd market and you want to make the funny eyes and do the work, I mean, there's still a spot for you. And not for nothing, Johnny gets a great reception. People do like that goofiness. So when he broke character and went into crazy mode, which wasn't to actually get Dunk alive or be crazy, Dana already offered him a rematch. He's already said it. He has not agreed to the rematch. He didn't say no, but he hasn't agreed to the rematch. Said, we'll think it over, right? If you actually went crazy and you actually want to fight a guy to the point that you're pushing an official aside, you'd agree to the rematch like that. Unless you're kayfabing. And I don't blame him for it. There's a good way to do it. But before we get to the kayfabe and before we get to the performance of Johnny having to act like I wanted to go on, before we do any of this make-believe, we have to back up to the idea that it never should have been there. Johnny came out and he put a tweet out, and it was great. And Johnny just said, if there's rules in the sport and we don't get a penalty if we don't follow them, why follow them? And Johnny's right. I mean, this is an issue that must be addressed at the executive level. Executive directors who are higher than have got to step in because the referees have very clearly band together and have attempted to overwrite the rule of what a down fighter is. And they're overriding the rule by not making it illegal. And there is, within the rules, it is the discretion of the referee to decide if it was intentional or it was unintentional. I bring that to you because, like, if Johnny and or Uncle Live wanted to protest this call, they would lose. They would lose. It's up to the referee. And the referee's already made it clear that his discretion says it's unintentional. And there was another fight that same night, Tim Elliott's fight. I mean, just the same night. We see this all the time. But even in Tim Elliott's fight, it happened twice. Twice. Tim's my friend. Tim's the one that did it. I'm calling out my own friend. But that's what happened. Tim did an illegal move twice. No points were taken away. The broadcast and the announcers weren't even suggesting, hey, they got to take a point for that. Not only you take a point, you give the guys 5 minutes. Not only you give us 5 minutes, you disqualify the other guy. We've only got a couple of rules in the sport. I mean, one of the bigger problems is the executive directors giving the authority to the referee to continue a match. If a guy cheats, you stop the match. There isn't different levels of cheating, by the way. Like when Mike Tyson bit Evander Holyfield and they stopped the match and they took Tyson's license away, that wasn't a different level. There are in society, there's all sorts of different levels of crime. Jaywalking and bank robbery are not the same crime. Take it from me, I've done both. They're different levels of crimes that come with different punishments. Some are citations, some are arrests, some are probation, some are jail time. But it's not that way within the administrative rules. They are all equal. That comes all the way down to ped use. Steroids will get you banned for 2 years. Advil, street name ibuprofen, got the 2008 Olympic gymnastic champion stripped and removed for the same 2 years that steroids would. They're all created the same. Whether you like it or not, that's a whole different conversation. They're all created the same. So if I bite a guy, do you think that they're going to continue that match? Do you think for any reason they're going to say, well, but he didn't bite him that hard. Yeah, he bit him and the skin broke, but we're kind of winding this one down. He's losing I think it's better for this guy. Plus there's the championship. This is just a mess. Let's just have him finish this out. Do you think that's going to happen? So why for this cheating violation is it even up to a discretion? Why? It's a rhetorical question. There's an answer. Do you guys know what it is? Because the executive directors are admitting up front when they wrote the rule that fighters are so goddamn stupid, they're going to go out and they're going to break the rule. We only have a few rules. No groin stuff. No eye pokes. Don't kick the son of a bitch when he's down. If you poked his eyes, or if you bit him for any reason, it's over. It's not even a debate. Not only that, the one and only time that we've actually seen it, not only was it over without a debate, they took the man's license away. And it's all equal, according to the commissions. All equal. All cheating and violations are equal, but they're not. It doesn't matter what the doctor said to Johnny. It doesn't matter that Johnny pretended. None of this matters. It never should have gone there. It was illegal. Johnny's asking a great question right now. If we have something illegal that is not punished and it's effective, why wouldn't I do it? And Johnny's right. And the executive directors and the commissioner, you always have these unforeseens. You plan something, you have the best of intents, and it gets off track. But once it does, and you have knowledge of that, you must fix it. And one executive director that wants to go down in the books as one that actually stepped forward, right? I mean, they're doing this for the money, but they hang their hat on taking the taxpayers' money on fighter safety, but they don't ever do anything to actually improve fighter safety. Now they have the evidence. Saturday, 3 times, not once, 3 times in one event. And I'm just using Saturday. I could go to the Saturday before that and the one before that. I could go to this organization and this organization. Happens all the time. And now that we have evidence that nothing is going to happen, why wouldn't you do it? If you're ever in a hard fight and you're not sure which way it's going to go, anybody would rather be no contest. Of course they would. Many guys would rather even be, if you're losing anyway, they'd rather lose by disqualification. Many guys. Now, they wouldn't do that if you're going to take their license, which is what they did the one and only time we've seen a bite happen, but they don't treat illegal activity the same. To Johnny's point, as of right now, as of Saturday, 3 different times, 2 different officials, there's no punishment at all. Johnny asks a good question. Why would I not do it? If there's no punishment, then it doesn't really feel illegal. And if it's going to help me, why wouldn't I do it? Why don't one of you answer his question? There's 50 of you in the country. One of you step forward, answer Johnny's question.